Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to preview rounds 21 of the NRL and New South Wales Cup, as well as round 4 in the Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership and round 1 in the NRLW. Plenty of action this week, obviously. It's my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, no Jersey flag this week. It's a global bye, but we have so much football to talk about. How you doing on this? Well, it's not blue skies here, but it's not overcast either. This rather ordinary Thursday, I suppose, in terms of weather.
Yeah, it's not you'd call cold, but it's certainly blustery out there. I had made it up to Eels training for the captain's run, so had a look at that. For people who aren't familiar with captain's runs, they're pretty light runs. There's no real opposed work that's done. It's just running through their shapes and structures and making sure everyone's right to go for the match. So you probably, if you're watching it, the only thing you really learn is if there's any late changes, that sort of thing to the team. But after they finished the session today, there was, and they finished their extras, so all the players had worked on a few things after the session had ended. A couple of fellas were having a goal-kicking competition in these blustery conditions, having a bit of fun with that, which is actually good to see from that perspective if you want the players to still be enjoying their football. And look, I don't normally talk about training sessions during the season for obvious reasons. I don't do training reports during the season. It's only during the pre-season. But I will mention the little bit of fun they had, because there is an anecdote in it that there was Gutho, Dylan Brown and Will Penasini that were having a bit of a goal-kicking competition. And it was obviously challenging out there in the wind, but there were some really good goals that were kicked from out wide. However, the fun really happened when they decided they'd take the kicking tees behind the try line. And I think you know what they were aiming for, to get that ball to bend in the wind and sail through the posts. And I thought, this is a bit ambitious. The wind's not quite that strong. But sure enough, Dylan's nailed a kick from the sideline and 5 metres behind the corner post, which hooked through. And then the king himself steps up, places his kicking tee on the corner of the sideline and the dead ball line, and manages to bend it right around and sail through the posts for a goal. So it was, and of course they celebrated. You can imagine the players celebrating when they kicked goals like that. And look, it was good to see them in a positive mindset. And look, I will say, despite what we're going to probably be saying in this preview, mate, and we may have some doom and gloom.
Grim tidings ahead for the preview, I suppose. But yeah,
the players seem to be in a fairly positive mindset today, and that's really all you can ask for, apart from them now turning up on the day and having a red hot crack. And we know they're going to be up against it this week. We know what the injury toll's like. We know that the Storm have got players coming back. It's a tall order. We're going to acknowledge that it's a tall order in our preview and our tips. I have no doubt about that. So, but anyway, it was a positive to the morning.
And before we get any further into our normal proceedings, big fella, quick word. Obviously, we recorded last time Tuesday night, our NRL and news podcast, and naturally, it wouldn't be a news podcast without massive news breaking the following morning. And I, in post, had a quick comment on a couple of things that happened for the Eels. I'm going to ask you about one of them, and that being the release of Matt Arthur. Club put out a statement saying that he's been granted a release based on compassionate grounds due to the unique and exceptional circumstances, which obviously pertaining to his father being the coach and getting sacked. What was your, just quickly, because you can talk at length here, but just quickly, what was your take on the statement and the release of another member of our 2023 SG Ball Premiership squad?
Well, it wasn't really a surprise, John. You and I had both been expecting it. We hadn't been talking about it as such, but we were waiting for what we felt was the inevitable of Budsy leaving the club. I don't really want to talk too much about the decision that was made either by Buds or by the club in granting a release. What I do want to comment on is I've had a lot of messages sent to me, all of which were very supportive of Buds from a wide range of supporters. I've also read some of the comments that have been in social media, and it's been a mixed bag of comments. People that have been critical of the club, people that have been, for some reason, critical of Buds. And what I don't understand is people piling onto him, suggesting that he's not, it's good riddance, he's not talented, he's not this, he's not that. I don't know what people watch. I honestly, I don't, because the young bloke is a 19-year-old in one of the toughest positions that you can be asked to play in the NRL. He was given limited minutes in those appearances. I thought that he played quite well for someone that was in that situation in a team, let's be blunt about this, in a team that is sitting at the bottom of the table. Now, similarly, there have been people who have been critical of Blaze Talangi. And again, I just don't get this. In both instances, these fellas are teenagers. And as for Blaze has played far more games than he would have been expected to play this year. He's been asked to play in basically every single backline position in his first season. And again, let's emphasise, in a team which is coming last or equal last in the premiership, a team which is possibly favourite to get the wooden spoon given the injury toll. And that's the other thing that we should mention briefly in context, the injury toll. These young blokes are playing exceptionally well to be able to hold their own in first grade under these circumstances. The one thing I'll finish off with is that we've spoken to many first graders over the years about when you become a first grade player. And what a lot of them have emphasised, and what even coaches have emphasised, is that players don't really become settled in first grade. They don't develop a first grade physique or a first grade mentality, the toughness, the resolve, until they've done about 3 or 4 pre-seasons. So any player in the NRL that you see that's a teenager or 20, 21 years of age, they are exceptional footballers to be able to do that, because if they've only had one pre-season behind them, they're not anywhere near who they are going to be as first grade footballers. And the likes of Blaze, of Charlie, Ethan Sanders, Buds Arthur, they've all done incredibly well. And for those that want to criticise Buds Arthur as they have, and I've actually seen comments about, he's only got where he is because of his father. And you have to laugh, because I'm sure Brad Arthur didn't select him as the captain and starting dummy half for the under-19s Origin team. I'm sure he didn't run the plays that Budsy was running in that game. I'm sure I'm sure BA wasn't the one that strolled over for the final try to seal the game. It's got me beat where the criticisms come from. And look, what we want to emphasise now is we can't go back and undo things that have happened at the Eels this year. And the stance that we're trying to take here at TCT is let's try to look through the windscreen of the car rather than in the rearview mirror, because we need to have learned by things that have happened. But if we keep dwelling on it and making the same decisions that we've made in the past, well, things don't turn around. And you and I, John, we're certainly disappointed to see talented junior players, talented pathways players leave the club, because we're already seeing Ethan Sanders going, we're seeing Budds go. We're hoping that it's not going to be followed by a couple of others. But we can't control that. We've got to, as supporters, we have to, I guess, be honest in our appraisal of what's going on. But we're not going to stick the boot into the players who go. And whilst we will be critical of decisions, we're not going to put the boot in on a personal level of people whose decisions we don't agree with. So that's probably all I really wanted to say, mate.
Yeah, well said. So let's get back to our regular broadcast, and it's a belated thank you to our sponsors of this episode, but thank you to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. We always praise Greg and the crew for their support for both TCT and the tip sheet, and it's true that without their help we wouldn't be here recording 3 times a week, so much love to them. Now, big fella, let's get into our preview podcast. We got 4 grades in action, starting with the Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership. Eels going into round 4. This one takes place Sunday, 1:00 p.m. out at Eric Tweedale Stadium, the home of women's pathways for the Parramatta Eels. They're hosting the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and the Eels are now impacted by the NRLW, so not having the full complement of players available for selection this week, which means there are a couple of different looks to the forward pack in particular. If you just quickly pull up the ladder, Souths are in 4th place coming to this game, 2 wins, 1 loss. Eels coming into this one, 1 win, 2 losses, after dropping games to St. George and Illawarra in back-to-back weeks. And they now look to get it right against the Rabbitohs. Starting at fullback, you have Yasmin Baker, you got Debbie Dwahi and Caitlin Pearden on the wings. Kate Fallon and Aaliyah Halmano named in the centres, although Fallon's position in this team could be subject to change, pending some off-field stuff that is in front of the Integra unit right now. Talara Bambut and Sarah Demicker in the halves. Front row sees Alita Namose and Tafawa Asua as props. Chelsea Makira is the dummy half. Chloe Jackson on one edge with Talisha Mayeva, the captain and other edge back rower. Riverly Arlo locking the scrum. On the interchange, it's Raf Perigo, Lasalio Sitapane, Raishi Fa'amasuli, Ashley Pottinger. Extended roster, Liana Dimmick, Fontaine Tafua, Caitlin Stanley, Bella Sanford, Shay Shipton and Tahila Valoanga. Looking at the Rabbitohs team, a couple of names that we recognise, and we mentioned it on the news podcast 60s, but Kiana Takarangi, Maddie Studden, Kiara McGregor, a few players there that we know have either experience or a pretty handy set of skills. So you can see why the Rabbitohs are in the top 4 provisionally right now. But yeah, what do we make of this one, mate? 1:00 p.m. out at Eric Tweedale, so much needed home game for the girls after a couple of weeks on the road. Can they make the most of this opportunity?
Well, that's a very, valid question, mate, because the Eels have been their own worst enemy in the last couple of weeks. After starting the season with victory over the Sea Eagles, the completion rates in their 2 matches since then have been extremely ordinary, to say the least. In the game against the Dragons, they were by far the most dangerous team that was of the 2 out on the field. They couldn't convert chances. They dropped a lot of the ball in possession to invite the Dragons into their half. It was it almost became a mistake-a-thon out there. And although I wasn't able to watch any footage outside of the highlights of their game against the Steelers, did a bit of a dig through the play-by-play, the stats, and what we saw, I think, was a completion rate of it was less than 70%, so it was somewhere in the mid-60s. 12 errors to the Steelers 5. Raf Perigo was sent off about halfway through the game, so they were playing a player down. I'm assuming she's either been found not guilty or has been fined because she's named in the team this week. Whether there was a judiciary decision that was coming after team lists came out, we don't know. But as far as we're aware, she's playing. So I can either assume she was found not guilty or only had a fine or send off sufficient. But they really just have to get their own house in order to be able to think about winning this game. It really comes down to looking in the mirror, and it's not a question of obviously defence became an issue, and I guess when you're playing with 12 players and then you're making lots of errors even before then, you're going to be putting pressure on your own defence. So if they tidy up the errors, it takes away the pressure on their defence, and then they can start thinking about what their opportunities to win are going to be, John.
Yeah, when we say that rugby league is a simple game, we're not joking. You take care of your own business, and so much of the rest of the game figures itself out. And it's not to say you can't be beaten by a good opposition regardless of that, but you certainly can make it very difficult for yourself, can't you, mate, when you're not completing your sets and you're turning the ball over with attacking opportunities for your opposition. So let's see our girls tidy up those aspects of their game, and maybe they can spring an upset against the fourth place Rabbitohs on Sunday.
Well, look, they've got the team that can do it. The Eels have a very good spine, powerful forwards, and we've seen that they've got some pace out there in the back. So I was really impressed with Yasmin Baker at fullback. And as I said, not only are the spine good, but you've got Raf Perigo, and I think without necessarily being too specific on where I'm assuming she was coming on, but it looked like she was coming on as a ball playing lock in the games where she's been coming off the bench. I could be wrong. They might have been swapping another player around, but when you've got ball players in there in the spine that they have, they're going to create opportunities. They've just got to ice them. It comes down to that. They've got to complete the sets, ice their opportunities, takes the pressure off defence. Bang, they're onto, they're starting to look at victories.
And, it is worth reminding that the Eels are a very young team here. They've got a lot of room to grow, both individually and as a squad. This is their first year in the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership. So as a squad, there's a lot of gelling to be done. So while there might be some teething problems right now, I'm expecting them to grow in the coming rounds and weeks, and hopefully they can bag enough wins to keep themselves competitive and in the hunt as that happens. So looking forward to the result here, 60s. What do you say, Eels to get the win, or Rabbitohs going to push them?
Look, I'm going to go with, I guess, the combination settling just that little bit more. This is their fourth game together. We know it's the inaugural team in this competition. You talked about the age of the players. I'll back them to get a win with a margin of 6 to 10 points. I'm going to aim to get out there to do a live blog of the match. That's my plan at this stage. I don't know whether the weekend is going to disrupt that plan in any way.
Yeah.
That will be the aim, to get out to Granville and to do some sort of coverage of the game, because it's not available on New South Wales Rugby League TV, and it would be nice to be able to provide coverage of the girls during this first season.
Very nice stuff, mate. Which brings us to, my tip being here before I move on. Look, it's going to be tough. They're a young squad, some volatility there because of it due to their inexperience, which means that they can also spring, really good results too when things go together. So I think it'll probably be maybe a narrow Rabbitohs win or a good Eels win, depending on which way the result goes. If the Rabbitohs squeeze out a win against us, or we get maybe a double-digit margin of victory. So I'm obviously hoping for us to win.
Mate, can I just say too at this stage, I suspected after watching the opposed training session that involved the NRLW, the Harvey Normans team, and the Wenty Harvey Normans team, that the Wenty Harvey Normans team was going to be very tough to beat.
Lo and behold, 3 wins, 0 losses. Wenty looking very good in this competition this year. Yeah,
so I suspect they might be the team to beat in the Harvey Norman women's comp. And as I said, they really impressed me in that training session. And I remember thinking to myself, who's this player? Who's that player? And they were just, some of the precision of their attack had to be seen to be believed.
Few players from Parramatta's pathways in that squad. I believe Daniil Sekold. Then we've got on the interchange Aliyah Sufan, and then the 18th player Casey Q.
Yes,
all been part of our pathways, and I see a couple of Schusters in the back line there. Obviously not Parramatta affiliated, but an NRL surname right there. And the fullback Caitlin Turnbull, who's also the captain, having a good season. So doing very well, Wenty. Well done.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we move on to the New South Wales Cup, the knock-on effect New South Wales Cup. This one taking place 3:00 p.m. on Saturday out at Henson Park. You mentioned on the News and NRL podcast 60s that is also the second part of the Beer, Wine and Food Festival. Prior to that, it was at North Sydney Oval. Now it's at Henson Park. So expecting a big turnout there for the festivities. And you can also catch this one on New South Wales Rugby League TV, the live streaming service for reserve grade and also other grades too. And Eels
should be a crowd of around 10,000. We know they announced that usual
6,400 or 200 or something. Yeah, whatever the final attendance ever, official attendance ever. But yes, we're expecting it to go over into the 10,000 sort of area, which is going to be a huge crowd for that venue. And obviously going to be pretty fun time there as well. But we look at the team 60s. There's some changes this week because the Eels, I mean, we thought they were ravaged by injury already, but just goes to show you should never say, surely it can't get any worse because, well, that's probably unfair. It's unfair on some of the young players coming in because I'm actually excited to see them coming in. But in terms of just like the overall, player availability across 3 grades now, it is absolutely brutal. Lorenzo Molitalo suspended this week for a hair pull on a long-range try the Dogs scored last week. And then also Eels missing Samuel Luiziu, who rolled his ankle pretty badly against Canterbury about halfway through proceedings in that game. And then no Sean Russell because he's been caught up to first grade. So their back line has a couple of changes here. At fullback, it's Zach Sini. Moe Alamadine gets his second cap on the wing here. Good to see him back in reserve grade. On the other flank, Isaac Lumi. Morgan Harper named in one centre position. And I have to assume he's playing, even though he hurt his knee pretty badly a couple of weeks ago, coming down after not just contesting, but actually catching an attacking bomb out at Lidcombe Oval. And he looked like he twisted his knee badly, but he's been named. So that's a boost if he's available. You have Araz Namba making his cup debut in the other centre position. Araz has been rock solid for the Eels in the flag. Been really, really good in centres there. So it's a nice little reward for his consistency in the 21s. Well done to Araz. And then in the halves, you got Lynn and Sanders working together once more because Dejan Arce has been recalled to first grade. Front row sees Offa Hickey, Ogden, and Brock Parker starting as the bookends to Matthew Arthur. And obviously we're puzzled on Team West Tuesday as to why Arthur being dropped, although that's been clarified since with the release being granted. And obviously he's not in the club's priorities to develop now, which I understand from the club's perspective. But he's the starting dummy half. Then you've got Jock Brazel, Matt Dury on the edges. Dury getting dropped from first grade this week. Dan Keir locking the scrum. On the interchange is Manny Luke, Tony Mattielli, Saxon Pryke, and Reece Alderton, taking on the Newtown Jets, who are always a formidable opponent at this grade. Plenty of talent for the fifth-place Jets available as well. They've got a former Canterbury half, Khaled Rajab, doing well for them this year. Niwai Peru has also been very good in the halves. Jaden Beryl, number 9. Billy Burns, Blake Hosking, Kyle Pickering. There's a lot of good young solid players here that keep them trending towards the top half of the ladder.
Yeah, Billy Magoulias on the...
Yeah, Billy the Greek gave us nightmares in the finals a couple of years ago when the goal was offside, but he had a chip kick that stole the game from then Wenty to stop us from going through to the grand final, I think.
Yeah, Samuel Healy is Mitch Healy's son.
I think you might be right about that.
Yeah. Just, well, mate, I mean, what can you say? We've noted that there is we're saying at least 13 players that are absent from both the NRL and New South Wales Cup combined, and that obviously includes as well players who were going to be part of the New South Wales Cup team this year, and that's including the likes of Richie Penasini and Arthur Miller-Stephen, Ethan Martin. So all those boys are out. You've then got the collection of players that are NRL selections also that are out injured. It's just a mess, and who knows? There might be more changes, more outs before the weekend. The way things are going, we don't take anything for granted here. So that's why we say there's at least 13 players that are out. In all honesty, I when I go and watch training, I think to myself, how many fit players are actually able to be on the training paddock this week? It's been a disaster of a season. I honestly can't remember a year like it for injuries, especially ones that are season-ending. And someone said to me, what about 1987? Because injuries certainly cruelled the Eels when they were looking to continue on from the premiership win of 86. But the players that took the field in 87, they weren't bottom of the table team. Like there was enough talent in the Eels that kept them mid-table. But everything's just so tested this year. You just look at where we're sitting on the premiership ladder to know the sort of impact that a number of factors have had this year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement that sums up both bad luck and maybe some suboptimal decisions surrounding depth for the club. And look, even considering all those factors, 60s, if the Eels have been full strength coming into this game, I am always leery of a trip to Henson Park. I've been there quite a few times now in my years covering reserve grade and junior reps. And junior reps have had some success there, but I struggle to remember many good efforts that we've had at that venue during my time as a blogger. And yeah, I think the boys they got the odds stacked against them this week.
Do you enjoy a trip to Henson Park, mate? Is it
in terms of travel, it's not bad. Just going down Old Canterbury Road, and then there's a couple of turns from there for me. But I do not like it as a venue. I hate the old athletic ground style venues where the field's in the centre and you're a million miles away. It's like the forefather of ANZ Stadium in a way, or whatever it's called these days, Allianz or Accor or whatever, without any of the modern trappings. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan, although I know people love their suburban grounds.
Yeah, I went there a number of times when Newtown were in the premiership and watching Para and Newtown through the late 70s and right at the start of the 80s. And I must admit, it's a tough ground to watch from. You have to get a decent spot up on what is a generous size hill, obviously.
Very generous.
It's supposed to hold 30,000 if everyone's crammed into the ground. When they've got 10,000 there for the beer, footy, and food festival, that's about as comfortable as you'd want it, I'd suggest. But there's nothing in the way of elevation on the, and we'll put in inverted commas, grandstand side of the field, because the old, what is it, King George the Sixth grandstand, whatever the name of the stand is there, used to have the old Jets bar up the top where Singo would host his guests in those halcyon days of the late 70s, early 80s for the Jets. But it's a pretty average sort of ground. I remember struggling trying to park out there as well.
I usually just park near the school. It's a couple of blocks down, and we'll walk there now, as opposed to going into the venue and trying to find a car park. It's look, I know there's a lot of golden memories about the suburban grounds, but I feel, and this isn't a criticism for the New South Wales Cup, which is the perfect place for going back to suburban grounds. But for me, it was always such a reinforcement of why the NRL needed to move on to proper, world class venues. So I don't mind going there for cup games for junior reps, but I would not go there for an NRL game. Much in the same way I've been quite critical of Leichhardt, which is a conventional football field too, which has that in its advantage. But I think there's a reason why suburban grounds need to be let go as first grade venues and maybe just embraced as reserve grade and junior rep venues.
I agree. It's if you can get a decent upgrade to the ground, if you are able to work on the infrastructure around the place, because that's part of it as well. You can't be expected to, as people are at Leichhardt, not be able to park within Cooey, or if you do, struggling for an hour and a half afterwards to try and get out of the place. It's just, there's a whole lot that has to be done right for a stadium of around 20,000 or more. And, but as you say, we actually do enjoy going to the suburban grounds for lower grade games, because one of the things, and this will probably apply for everyone who's still able to get to Henson Park, even though it's a fair distance from the playing field to the spectator areas, is because you don't have that big crowd noise. You hear the collisions. You hear the players communicating with each other out on the field, so you know what the talk's like out there in the team. It gives you that perspective that you don't get when you've got a big crowd about what's actually happening out on the field. I guess it's why the television and radio coverage have their sideline eyes to be able to talk about what they can hear out there on the field. So anyway, mate, we'll get on with this game. You covered the New South Wales Cup loss to the Bulldogs last week.
Yeah,
I was out there at Lidcombe the week before for the game where they just threw in the towel, and it's the only way I can describe it, mate. That loss to the Warriors. I thought I'd seen diabolical in the game against the Raiders.
It comes back to Shoy. To be fair, they played 40 minutes of their best football, but then 40 minutes of diametrically even worse football. Crazy stuff, that game.
You couldn't believe it was the same team in the second half as it was in the first half. It was just like people decided they just weren't going to tackle you. And you can literally say that because the scoreline in the second half was 42-0. After a 28-4 lead in the first half, 42-0 in the second half, there's only one message that you get out of that. And it was evident after about 10 minutes of the second half when the Warriors had got a couple of tries and the players had their hands on their hips and their heads down, even though they still enjoyed a 12-point lead. You knew if you're at the ground and you saw the body language and the lack of talk that was going on, it was palpable that they were gone.
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it just got, I have no words for what I was seeing with the defence of the team. So, and then, the scoreline probably flattered them last week, 32-22, in that loss to the Bulldogs. Those late tries, John, as you spoke about at the in the news podcast. So, what can you say? I mean, I said last week I couldn't tip. I couldn't make a prediction on the game. Didn't want to after what I witnessed at Lidcombe Oval. I'm less inclined to give any sort of tip in this game based on now the last 2 weeks. What about you? Can you offer anything?
I don't have a positive outlook on their chances this week. I think they're going to a traditionally tough venue where they struggle at, playing a traditionally strong opponent, coming off the back of some brutal losses where they've lost even more troops. They're out without a number of players this week. No Dejan, Lusick, Mulatalo, Makatoa, Loiziu, Russell. They're, beyond short on troops now at this point. And the only positive I'll, glint out of this is you got a couple of young guys in the back line, getting another look in Alamadine and Nunva. I hope they both do very well. I mean, Moe was great in the first half against the Warriors. He had a really strong first half debut, and then just didn't get. The team didn't have the ball in the second half, and I don't think he even had a chance to get barely a run in the second stanza. So I'm hoping that even if they end up losing, solid by some margin, that they can continue to get the ball in the hands of some of these young guys and give them a chance to develop.
Well, if we take this, take that line as a positive, we have the likes of Mohamed Al-Madine, Josh Lynn, Ethan Sanders, Matt Arthur, Saxon Pryke, who were all members of the winning SG ball team last season. And then you can throw in a Raz, and you can throw in Jock Brazel and Brock Parker as being teammates, squad mates in the Jersey Flegg side last season. And I guess if you have Zach Sini playing some better football than we've probably seen from him. Like, Zach had actually had a very, very good season this year, and it did not go well for him against the Warriors. How would you have assessed his performance against the Bulldogs, mate?
Oh, he wasn't the issue against the Bulldogs.
Okay,
our right edge was just leaky, and the when he was faced with 2 and 3 on ones at the last line, there was no chance he ever had of saving any tries there.
Yeah. So look, taking out that game against the Warriors, he's had a very positive season. Then he's joined in the halves with Lynn, Sanders, and Arthur, who they're good mates. They have that experience of playing together in junior reps and in Flegg. So there are some combinations there. Matt Dury was exceptional at this level before he was elevated to first grade. So, look, and Manny Luke, he's been really good in playing in tandem with Woods Arthur. So it seemed to work well there when they interchanged there. So if I try to find some positives, I can go, well, you know what? They were getting some wins before with similar combinations. Why can't they? I guess the answer to why can't they is look at the last 2 weeks, what's happened. But, if they can get their head focused on, look, let's just get back to getting some basic football fundamentals done, and that starts with defence. So, But I'm not going to tip in this one because it would be tipping the opposition. So we'll leave my comments there. Anything you want to add, mate?
Yeah, unfortunately, I am tipping a pretty strong Jets victory here. Eels just in a bit of a rut now. And like you said, they have done well in similar circumstances earlier this year. String together some really impressive wins. I just feel like they're that down on resources now that, combine that with a bit of heads down losses. You're seeing maybe something similar to what's happening in first grade. So I hope not, but Henson Park is a tough venue. So we move on now to the first week of the NRLW. Season 2024 launching this week with the Eels going up to Brisbane Saturday, 12:45 p.m, playing out of Suncorp Stadium, one of the cathedrals of rugby league. Couldn't ask for, obviously playing away from home sucks, but couldn't ask for one of the more hallowed venues of the game to launch your season with. And the Eels take on the Broncos. Coverage on 9 Now, Gem, KO and Foxtel. Let's start with the Broncos quickly 60s. One of the premiership favourites coming into this round. Fullback, they got Haley Maddock, Julia Robinson and Bree Spreadbro on the wings. Mala Hufanga and Lauren Dam in the centres. Skylar Adams and Ali Brigginshaw, who is their captain, in the halves. Front row, Annetta Cordia, Noah Sala and Brianna Clark. Jada Ferguson, the dummy half. On the edges, Maria Denman and Remy Teitzel. Keely Joseph locks out a very impressive back row. On the interchange, it's Lavinia Gould, Chelsea Lenarduzzi, Tasman Rapana, and then Jasmine Fogavini. Extended roster, Tafito Lafaela, Hannah Larson, and Bridget Hoy. So it's a very talented Brisbane Broncos lineup. No Gail Broughton, though. Is she injured, or did she move on elsewhere this season?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure. That was my big question that I was going to pose to you.
Jumping on there. Let me just have a quick old search. She's still tied to the Broncos, I believe, officially. She's part of their. Let me just go to NRLW here. In the back line. Yeah, she's still in the squad list as a 5'8", so she must be injured or suspended or something. She's too big of a star to not be named in round one.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can't imagine her not being able to earn a place in the back line somewhere. She's versatile and but look, the Broncos, mate, when we were talking about our tips for the year, I still rated them as a chance of playing in the decider. Know that it hasn't worked for them the last couple of years. It just, for whatever reason, it hasn't come together. But look at the strike power.
Yeah.
Their team.
It's a dynamic back line with a wrecking ball and Hofanga. It's a very strong forward pack, and it's got some class in the spine, especially with Ali Brigginshaw. But, Howie Maddock's a good young fullback. They've got, good half in Ferguson. Sorry, good dummy half in Ferguson. It is a very well-balanced team. The question is, can they, compete with the Eels this week, which we're hoping no, but in terms of the macro picture, can they hang with the likes of Newcastle? And I would have said the Roosters, but the Roosters have been set back by a couple of big injuries in the back line. So it remains to be seen how they're going to handle that. But, this is going to be interesting to see where the Broncos are at week one, because great team on paper, but I've underachieved in recent seasons, like you said, 60s. Yeah,
but you have to think Hofanga with her second pre-season of NRLW behind her, because she was still raw as a rugby league player last year, coming across from Union to the Ferns team, I think, in the World Cup. That was her first foray into rugby league, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Look, she was always, last year was always going to be a learning experience for her. You'd have to think she's going to be a little bit fitter. She's going to be a little bit more attuned with the game. She's going to be a huge threat for the Broncos. But, mate, our Eels, how about you run through how we look for this one?
Yeah, they've had a very strong pre-season with a great win over the Dragons, combined with a strong training program under new coach, Steve Georgallis. And not too many, if any, surprises in the squad. He's named 60s, which means we start, as always, at fullback. Breakout player from 2023, Abby Church has the one on her back. Zoe Faye and Monique Donovan are on the wings. Rory Owen and Rosie Kelly, new faces in the centres. Rosie, obviously the big wild card for the Eels. Talking about players of a rugby union background, she comes across as a Kiwi Sevens recruit. Very interested to see how she goes out there out wide. In the halves, Cassie Hiku, one of our players to watch this season, will partner Rachel Pearson as the halfback there. Front row, Elsie Albert, Maddie Jones as the props, Ruben Charrington the dummy half, young Boss Kapua on one edge, and Mahalia Murphy, both captain and the other edge player down the left, I want to say. Kennedy Charrington is at lock. On the interchange, Tanaka Todd Hunter is the dummy half utility, Tyler Amiatu, Jade Fanua, Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis, the forward rotation players. Extended roster, Tafawa Asua, Rosemary Beckett, Chloe Jackson, Kate Fallon, again, asterisk there, Pahuka Berryman Duff as the final reserve. Before we talk about the team there, 60s, interestingly, Rosemary Beckett, Pahuka Berryman Duff. I thought Pahuka might have been injured, but Rosemary Beckett not named in the HNWP as well. So I don't know if that's something to watch there or if she's going to go up to Brisbane as a reserve. But Tafawa Asua was named in the front row, I believe, for the other squad. So not sure what's going on there with squad logistics, but something to consider. But yeah, like I said, no real surprises in the 17 players named to take on the Broncos. Steve Georgallis playing this one for pretty straight bat and picking the players that have had strong pre-seasons and also, good form last season in his top 17 round one.
Yeah, so we've got two debutants in Owen and Kelly, and apart from that, we're seeing a lot of players backing up from last season, a number of which we just didn't see enough of. And, of course, in that we're talking about the key players, Elsie Albert, Kennedy Charrington and Rachel Pearson. So a combination of injury and suspension limited their appearances for the Eels last year. And, as far as I'm concerned, Elsie Albert is literally making her debut. Essentially,
she is, yeah. We got to see so little of her, and the little we got to see was impressive. But, yeah, it was so fleeting. So big part of the forward pack, the anchor of the forward pack there, the player they brought in to be the tone setter. And we saw that in that trial against St. George where she was laying the wood in defence. So really keen to see her take her primary role as a, on-field leader for the Eels in the pack. And ditto for Rachel Pearson, who is their on-field marshal. And the team's going to need the direction from her in the big moments in order to be competitive with the best teams. So going to be very interesting to see how this team goes, blending the experience of those two players with those, youthful breakout players we mentioned like Church and Toi Hiku, Faye as well. Then you got the new centres there. So Eels got a lot of things in the mix right now, a lot of balls they're juggling in the air. But for me, I think that's all the not outside noise, but that's not even superfluous. It's just like that's the extra stuff. I think the big thing for Steve is, can he raise the floor in this team? Can he really instill high levels of play on the fundamentals? Because as we've seen, we just literally talked about it with the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership 60s. You take care of your own business when it comes to getting to your kick, completing your sets, making your basic defensive assignments. That puts you so far ahead of being competitive on a week-to-week basis. And everything else is, it's not just gravy. There's a lot of work to be done after that in terms of the big moments and executing high-level offensive, structures. But it just makes you competitive, and it puts you in a contest, and it lets you sniff out upsets that you shouldn't otherwise be, capable of doing. So I'm really keen to see what Steve can do with this team in terms of raising the floor before we even talk about raising the ceiling. And I think that maybe the Broncos being drawn first might not be a bad thing for them in that regard. Let them play some physical, direct football. You got to really watch out for players like Hufanga and obviously Ali Brigginshaw. So got to be on alert defensively. But then they'll have a chance to maybe flex some of that individual brilliance on the back of a good team effort, setting themselves up in this game.
John, I think we just mentioned the inclusions for the Eels, the new players, the players returning from injury or from just absences with suspension last year. And the one biggest inclusion that we should mention now is the new coach, Steve Georgallis. It was evident from watching the opposed session the other week at pre-season training that the way that the Eels will play this year will be completely different. In that, after watching that opposed session, I made a number of observations. First of all, they were playing a faster brand of football, very, very fast around the ruck. Secondly, there was far more structure to what they were doing. Their attacking shapes, you could actually see the shapes a lot clearer from a spectator point of view. You don't want the opposition to be seeing that as quite as clear, but it was obvious that they were playing with more structure. The shifts were precise. They were challenging for the defence to read. It was, and in defence, the communication that was going on, the girls were reminding each other about their defensive goals while they were out there. And you could obviously in that setting, you could hear the talk that was going on out on the field. And I came away, did the report and made those observations. And then lo and behold, in that trial, I think we saw exactly that they seem to have a lot more in the way of teamwork. Like they look like a unit, a football unit, and they play aggressive. There's no doubt the forwards that are in this team have got a bit of edge to them, haven't they? I mean, Kennedy and Reuben have always had quite a bit of aggression and edge to their play. But when you add in Mahalia Murphy, who is as tough as nails, like she is just one tough conveyance. We'd raved about Boss Kapua when she was playing Tasha Gale for the Bulldogs. When we secured her, I mean, we were both over the moon.
Yeah.
Like how did we manage to get Boss Kapua out of the Bulldogs system? I mean, I know the Bulldogs don't have an NRLW team, but she was a real significant gain as far as I was concerned. Alongside the middles in Albert and Jones, you've also got that real breakout player from last year in Tyler Amiatu, and of course the very first Parramatta Eels girls pathway player to go through to the NRLW in Ruby Jean Kennard-Ellis, who would be continuing to develop as a mature rugby league player, being her second season. Is it her second or third season now? I'm just trying to think.
I think it's her third season now.
Yeah, this will be her third season of NRLW. So, we were worried for a while there she was going to end up at the Tigers. But, yeah, look, that pack really, as I said, they hunt as a unit and they're very aggressive. And what we've now got in the back line is some genuine strike. And just seeing the way they were involving Abby Church in a lot of the plays in that training session, and then what she was able to deliver in the trial. And of course, we're all over that move of Cassie Toihiku in closer to the play. And when we were chatting to Steve Georgallis in the podcast during the junior rep season, and he indicated to us, I'm looking at her in the halves. That was music to our ears, as you remember. So, look, there are a lot of positives. I'm really looking forward to this first game from them because, I mean, let's face it, our NRL team's not going to be able to deliver finals football. I'd like to believe that this team can qualify for finals football. Again, we have to be hoping an relatively injury-free run, but yeah, there we have it.
Yeah, big matchup against the Broncos. Going to be tough to win, but I am going to back our girls to get that first up victory. I know the Broncos are heavily favoured at the line here. Sportsbet have them $1.20 favourites. 450 Eels rank outsiders. But I really like the preseason. New energy under a new coach. I think Steve Georgallis and the wealth of NRL experience he brings to the NRLW is going to be really significant for the Eels. And I'm really keen to see what he can extract out of a team that probably underperformed the last couple of years. I know they made the grand final in 2023, but the circumstances behind that we've spoken about a lot. It was a smaller competition and, sort of had a bit of luck strike their way. But I think that this, like we said in the news podcast, maybe lacking the outright star power of some of the, more favoured teams in this competition. But I think there is some real talent here. And if, like I said, if Steve can raise the floor, which will in turn raise the ceiling of their play, I think they can make some noise. So I'm gonna tip them to win here. The margin's kind of tough. We don't really know if there's been any change to like the meta game for the NRLW. We're going to wrestle more this year. That could impact things, but I will go the Eels to win by maybe 8 points in this one. I will go, maybe Abby Church first try scorer. And then best on field, well, there could be a few players eligible here, but I will go with Captain Mahalia Murphy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go with Mahalia Murphy to be first try scorer. I think she'll crash through on an edge, get over. I think, like you, the margin's going to be around that 6 to 8 points. And as for the best on field, I'm a bit torn between tipping Cassie Toihiku and Elsie Albert for this one. I might go Elsie.
Elsie?
We'll go.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and now, mate, this brings us on to, this is going to be a tough one to do.
Well, quote unquote, the main event.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for the Eels, we've mentioned it, the injury toll, the suspension toll, beyond any other factors that we've discussed, both formally in the podcast and informally, all fans have obviously had to talk about it. Eels doing it tough. They're hosting the Melbourne Storm. It's 16 v 1st on the ladder, 8 o'clock p.m. Friday night. This one you can catch on all major broadcasting channels, 9 Now, KO, Foxtel. And if you're in the vicinity, you can catch myself and Sixties in the pre-game show at the Bistro. I believe 6:30 p.m. is the kickoff here, Sixties?
No, we're actually 5:30.
5:30, there you go. No, yeah, you're right, because there's me getting my wires crossed there. No pre-game there. So 5:30 with special guest Stephen Edge. So you're going to talk about some great stuff with Parramatta's first ever premiership winning captain and a real icon, not just for fans but among the playing group of that era as well. So hopefully you can get by and say hello to us there. But in terms of the game, Melbourne Storm, they were unbackable favourites coming to this game before they had the announcement of the players returning 60s. But their squad is formidable. Ryan Pappenhausen at fullback, Will Warbrick and Grant Anderson on the flanks, Jack Howarth and Nick Meaney in the centres, Tyron Wishart named provisionally at 5'8". He's had a great season as well, young Tyron. He partners Jerome Hughes, again provisionally because we'll get to that shortly. In the front row, Tui Kamikamifa and Josh King are the props. Harry Grant captains the team from dummy half. Sean Bloor and Elisa Katoa are on the edges. Trent Loiero locks their forward pack. On the interchange, dynamic young playmaker Sualivi Farlongo is in the 14. Christian Welch makes his return, and he's joined by another returnee in Nelson Asofa Solomona, adding some serious beef to the rotation for the Storm. Lazarus Varlepu rounds out their rotation. And then we go to the extended roster. Dean Aremia, Tepai Moroa, and then some chump named Cameron Munster making his potential return from an injury he sustained against the Parramatta Eels way back in Magic Round. So he'll be a huge boost to the Storm. Rounding out their extended roster, Chris Lewis and Ramus Smith. So they are the best team, well, in terms of results and probably in terms of just consistency of play as well, the best team this season. I know Penrith are going to be still most people's team to beat in the finals, but Melbourne certainly making a strong case to be worthy challengers to the three-time champions in Penrith. And unfortunately for the Eels, we are in their line of fire this week. What do you make of that Storm team, 60s?
Doesn't seem to matter who they name. They just do the essentials of rugby league so well. They compete. They are able to follow game plans. the players who you might say are their foot soldiers just do such a good job of supporting the key players in the team. When players are required to step up in their contribution to the team, and you mentioned that in Wishart before, all of a sudden they can find a level above what you thought they as an individual were capable of.
Yep.
It's the hallmark of the Storm team is getting the best out of players or getting more out of players. So in terms of what we can do against them, we'd found a way to compete against the Storm in recent seasons, hadn't we? We're like probably the last where they were truly our finals bogey team. The Eels had been finding ways of securing wins against them in the last few years. Last year was not great in terms of that last minute defeat. It was extra time defeat, wasn't it, against the Storm? It was extra time, wasn't it, in the first round last year?
Yeah, Harry Grant scoring a golden point, yeah.
Yeah, and of course there was the controversial officiating decision towards the end of normal time when I think Hodgson was penalised for something where the penalty should have actually gone to the Eels, and
correct.
Would have been a chance for a shot at goal from about 40 to 45 metres out, but right in front, which would have, if it was kicked, given the victory to the Eels. But that's a whole other story. It's a typical Parramatta and officials story. But there is. You look at the teams and you look at the current form, and you go, this probably won't be pretty. And even though it's an Eels home game, you just can't have the number of players unavailable that the Eels do and not pay the penalty. It was already a tough enough ask in terms of the relative form of the two teams. It was already a tough enough ask with the Eels having all the mid-season drama that they've had with parting ways with BA and now his son saying he wants a release, and the speculation about different players that are being tapped on the shoulder or ones that are in negotiations with other clubs. Yeah, it's a bastard of a year, John. It's an absolute bastard of a year. And I don't know, I'm trying to find a way that the Eels compete in this. I guess the only thing I would say is that Parramatta have been competing in the losses that they've strung together. There's been matches where the chance for a win's been thrown away. There might be question marks about some of the opponents in that run, that if they were playing against the Storm or the Panthers, that they would not have been able to be in the contest as they were. But you only play the opposition that's there. It doesn't mean there's a positive that you can take necessarily out of it for the Eels. We just, I guess, as supporters right now, we want them to compete. We hope for wins, but we're also, unfortunately, we have to be realistic about what the likelihood is. We'll be out there. We'll be cheering for them. And we hope that many others are there as well. But realistically, it's hard, I think, to compete on a class basis with some of the players that the Storm will be rolling out against us, and just their consistency of form and confidence. Yeah.
And if you are getting out there on Friday night, you will be attending Quinton Guthoson's 200th game as a Parramatta Eel, obviously being an incredible servant for the club. And I know things are tough right now, but it is important to remember you can't really call it a golden period because they didn't get the premiership, but it was a gold-plated run, wasn't it? Since he's joined the club, barring 2018 and then now obviously 24. but he's been an incredible servant for the club, and he is the fullback this week. After a lot of talk about where his future is positioning at the club, he will be in the one, captaining the team. On the flanks, you've got Jake Tungor and Sean Russell, Blaze Talangi and Will Penasini are in the centres. We mentioned on Team List Tuesday that Will has the 4 on his back, and I don't know if that's indicative of a potential changing of the sides, but even in its current configuration, assuming that Will would be on the his traditional right side of the field, it feels like it's the umpteenth different configuration of the Parramatta Eels backline. Blaze Talangi getting shuffled around again. He's in the centres, has played wing, has played 5/8 and fullback. So, yeah, Eels doing it tough in the backline. In the halves, Dylan Brown partners Dejan Arce. Dylan will be presumably on the right edge with this combination. You've got Reg and Woody in the front row, Reagan Campbell-Guard and Widow McGregor as props, Brendan Hands the starting dummy half, Sean Lane and Bryce Cartwright on the edges, Ryan Madison locking the scrum, Joey Lussick, the dummy half utility on the interchange, Joe Ofengahi, Luca Murray and Makahesi Makatoa, not the extended, the actual bench. Then the extended bench, Ethan Sanders, Matthew Arthur, Matt Dory, Morgan Harper, and Dan Keir. Trent Barrett, Jason Riles, whoever's in charge of the team list now, obviously not many chips to play with, not many cards in the deck, and they're trying to put together what they can. But it's pretty grim reading, 60s. Like, you want to be positive, but the reality is, we look at the Melbourne, who are getting back to full strength, and the Eels, who have pretty much half their salary cap on the sidelines, again, beyond any other problems that you can bring into the conversation. They're just, they're not. There's a reason why they are even bigger outsiders than the NRLW team, who probably been treated a bit unfairly by the bookies. Eels $6.05 outsiders. You don't get it much bigger at club level in the NRL. Yeah,
and even though those odds look juicy, there's just no way to get on. And probably just to clear it up, Jason Riles doesn't have anything to do with what's happening with the Eels on a week-to-week basis at the moment. He's not even locating himself at Kellyville. Out of respect for what is happening between now and the end of the year, he's dedicating his time to what's happening at Parramatta, but it doesn't involve getting mixed up in the coaching, the training, the preparation of the team in this 2024 season. I think they've got a full squad of coaches that are still there. It doesn't need for things to be muddied any more than what it is. So, just to clarify that for now, I've had a bit of a chat with the club about that, and that's what the situation is. So, mate, as I said, how could this team go about winning a game against the Storm? Is it about spoiling? Is it about chancing their hand more than they might if they were in contention for finals football, and hoping that the luck falls their way?
It's definitely some combination there of I think you've got to play spoilers as much as possible. You've got to play, probably higher risk football than you would otherwise like to in a neutral setting. And then probably above both those things, you just got to claw and fight for every little contest that presents itself in this one, just desperately. You've got to make cover tackles because they're going to throw, they're going to bring some offense that's going to trouble us. So you got to absorb that initial blow, and then make the cover tackle. You got to find a way to hold guys up over the line when they're almost, sure things for scoring or knocking the ball out if they're diving in the corner. It's those little things that when you're that far behind the starting line in terms of a pure personnel, head-to-head basis, that you need to find little things to make up in the margins in a game like this. And, as always, you look to your big game players or big name players, Gutho, Penasini, Dill, and then, it starts getting a little bit thin there in terms of match-winning options because, we've got a lot of solid forwards but not game breakers. And then you start looking to a young guy like Blaze Talangi, as a potential X factor in this, and it's an unfair burden to put on a young kid, but they're the sort of players that need to stand up in a game like this to spark an upset of that magnitude.
Yeah, and again, there's been a lot of criticism for individuals. I spoke about that before with the expectation that's put on someone like Blaze. Again, let's temper let's think about it, people. Yeah, Blaze as a 19-year-old and only just turned 19 too. His birthday, I think, is in May. We're talking about not only is he young, but he missed most of last season with two different injuries. He was there for the business end of both the SG Ball and the Jersey Flegg seasons, but he missed the majority of those seasons. He missed the back half of the pre-season last year. I think he picked up the injury around about the last session of the before Christmas in the pre-season last year. So, he's, in terms of his preparation, he's got one NRL pre-season behind him, almost no New South Wales Cup time because he was elevated so early in the season, which wasn't part of the plan. And now there's not a regular position that he's playing in. He's just been shifted left, right, and centre. And it was for people to say, "Oh, he's not as good as what he's not worth the money. He's not as good." Blah blah blah. It's, man, you're asking a lot of a kid who's playing in a team which is sitting at the bottom of the ladder
and playing a different position every other week.
Yeah, let's just get things in order. And on top of that, he's playing in a team where that side hasn't had their regular halfback for most of the season because of the injuries to Mitch Moses, and he's not going to have him for the rest of the season. So it's just, any young kid that's in that team is going to be doing it tough for a start. Now, what I'm pretty sure about this week, John, is that at some stage, Wiramu Greg's going to hurt someone.
Hopefully it's not going to draw the ire of the main official or the man in the box, because I think Woody likes to bring the aggression in defense. Is what you want from your big guys. You want them to be that kind of tone setter. But the way they protect players off the ball now, if you get it wrong, you'll be sitting down, both for the game and beyond that. So,
I'm not suggesting that he's going to do anything that's untoward.
No, but that's what I'm saying is that
I think he's going to be a man on a mission.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to try to do deliberately hurt someone off the ball. But that margin for error these days is razor thin. So that's the only thing I'll be cautioning Woody on potentially is make sure you don't miss in terms of the timing. But yeah, I think he'll be out there trying to iron out some players for sure. We've seen it in New South Wales Cup this year. He's tried to be an enforcer in a positive way in that grade, and I hope that he can do that within good reason in the NRL, because the team needs it. A lightning rod moment in defense to rally the troops and maybe get a turnover. That would be huge.
Yeah, and aside from that, I think a couple of the positives there in the forwards can actually be found on the bench. Joe Offengowi's had a most consistent season, and Luca Moretti, we know how much energy he brings to the game. He's got the odd error that's there, but he brings, I think, something similar to what people were happy to see Charlie Geimer bring. Just that fearless, fast-paced football in the forwards. So,
and in recent weeks, he's managed to keep the errors down, if not any, I believe. So, and obviously notch that try up against the Gold Coast Titans. He brings leg speed through contact, the ability to have an elite offload, some good footwork before contact, all things you want in a interchange forward. So, Luke is definitely one of those project guys that I think has the potential to kick into something bigger, and it's good to see him having gone back to reserve grade earlier this year, come back and look like he's brought a bit more polish to his game, which is exactly what you want when you bring you put a guy back to develop. So hopefully he can continue to have positive games for the rest of this season, because the Eels, both this year and next, need everything they can get from players like Luca.
Yeah. So, look, I think if the Eels are going to compete with the Storm, it's going to come down to, we spoke about those sort of spoiling tactics, chancing the hand. But look, outside of that, we still need some of these basics, like a good kicking game. And it's really important with Mitch Moses not being there. And maybe we're not going to have the long kicking game, but the short kicking game, I think, is going to be crucial. So, if we do see it from time to time with teams that rather than kicking on the last, they're prepared to chance their hand passing the ball on the last and turning the ball over 5 metres out from the line, rather than giving the opponents a line dropout where there might be a 40-50% chance of the kicking team getting the ball back. But yeah, look, I think against the Storm, you have to ask that variety of questions. No Mitch Moses, but let's see what Dejan and Dylan can bring in terms of, if not a long kicking game, then definitely short kicking game. Let's see what we can bring in terms of getting in there and putting the Storm off their game physically. Just messing them up a bit. Nothing illegal, just let's mess them up a bit. So I don't know that there's too much more to say. We're expecting Munster will probably play.
Well, there's two schools of thought here. Is that the Storm don't need him because they've already got that much of a personnel or positional advantage, or B, this is the perfect game to bring him back as a warm up.
I see it as the perfect game.
Yeah, I think he'll play and probably push Tyron Wishart to the interchange, and then one of the forwards, possibly Lazarus, to the extended roster.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to our tips, because we've managed to ramble on as we always do. So, mate, yeah, give us your score line, your first try scorer, and your predicted best on field.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think Melbourne are going to win and win big this week, which sucks for such a big milestone game for one of the Eels' core players and their captain, Quinton Gutherson. I think if Parramatta can keep it to 18, they've done well. I fear that it's going to be 30+ in terms of the differential, maybe even more. Melbourne are on a roll, and they've just gotten better this week. Parramatta's uncanny knack to take on opponents that get tremendous boosts back the week they're playing the Eels. Like I said, it is just something otherworldly. And again, it's true this week when you talk about, obviously, Munster headlining it, but Welch and a Surface Island owner also boosting the forward pack. So Melbourne to be big winners. In terms of the Parramatta Eels, their first try scorer, I'm just going to go, I'm going to be, keep it simple. First try scorer, best on field, will go with the milestone man, Quinton Gutherson. I think you'll, as always, put everything he's got on the line, and while it might not be good enough to get the win, I think he can hold his head up high at the conclusion of 80 minutes of football.
Okay, so I really don't think there's any way I can call on the heart to find a win this week, and it really hurts me to say that. It hurts me no end. I think if we can stay within 20 points of the Storm, and this is a horrible thing to say, it almost sounds like a defeatist attitude, but if the Eels can stay within 20 points of the Storm, or less for an extended period, maybe the game becomes more of a contest.
Mm-hmm.
But I fear, like you do, that the final margin will exceed 30 points by some space.
And they're one of those teams that when they sniff blood in the water, they will go for the throat.
Well, we've experienced that before, haven't we?
Yep.
So, my hope is a margin that's less than 20. My fear is a margin that's I'll be blunt. I think it might be the biggest margin of the season.
Officially put out of the hunt for the premiership, 50-pointer.
Yeah. And as I said, that really hurts. In terms of the Eels' first try scorer, I'm going to give it to a player looking for his first NRL try in Jake Tungor. And in terms of the Eels' best on field, I'm like you, the 200 gamer, Clint Gutherson. We know what we're going to get from Clint, and he's the person that deserves for this to be the unexpected type contest. So maybe I can give a little caveat that the players do turn up big time because it's Gutho's 200th. Every player plays out of their skin. Every player performs at a level above what we thought they were capable of producing. And the biggest shock of the season unfolds. And Gutho gets to celebrate 200 games in the manner that he should be able to. So there's the little addendum prediction. But, John, I think that just about winds things up.
Yep.
Again, that reminder too that you just gave that we'll be at Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels, starting at 5:30 in the bistro with our pre-game preview and chat with the Eels' legendary hooker, captain of the first ever premiership winning team, Stephen Edge. The man is a legend to talk to. Come in, get there early to the club. I know that the kickoff's not till about 8 o'clock. There's no curtain raiser game, but get yourself into the club because it is the home of the Eels. Get yourself up to the bistro to have a listen to Steve Edge. You can have a meal, have a drink, listen to Edgy talk, give us some anecdotes from the past, talk about his former teammates, maybe come up with the odd quip or two that draws a bit of a laugh about some of the idiosyncrasies. That's the word, isn't it? Idiosyncrasies of some of the players that he's played alongside.
Mm-hmm.
So we look forward to seeing you there. Come and say g'day to us. Come and have photos or get something signed with Edgy. Look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks as well to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, to Greg and the team. As always, they help us to get the Eels content out to you every single week. John, thank you. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you for all the kind words you send through to us. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.